Today's episode is presented by LodeStar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Lending Leaders. My name is Alayna Gardner, AMP, and this week I'm joined by Tim Austen, our marketing content manager. I've had to remind myself of all of our employees' titles this week, and it turns out it was harder than I thought it was going to be. So thank you, Tim, for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
So Tim edits our podcast and also produces Tale of Two Mortgages, our comic strip, every week. And also recently produced our lovely data reports that are coming out. So our first ever purchase report and refinance report for closing costs for all 50 states. We're really excited about that. This comes out in between them. So I think it's Monday.
The 5th?
The 5th of May, our refinance report comes out. Our purchase report is already out if you're watching this before the 5th of May. Or if it's after, you can get both right now on the LodeStar website. Crazy concept.
For free.
For free. How crazy is that? But as we kind of get jumped into this, we didn't actually ask you this last time you were on the podcast, which is how did you end up here? How do you get in the mortgage industry?
Still not sure. No, I came to the mortgage industry by way of academia. So not at all what most people do when they're coming into this.
Fair.
From 10 years ago, I wanted to be a professor. I was studying history. And what I didn't realize while I was sort of chasing that dream was I was acquiring a lot of other skills in the background. When you're in grad school, you always have like a work study thing. And you have editorial responsibilities that are like some professor who always wanted to get a blog off of the ground says, do you know WordPress? And you say yes, and then Google it. And then, pretty soon, a week later, you're pretty good at WordPress. So by the time I was realizing that's not really where I want to go, I had in the background acquired quite a few marketing skills, SEO, WordPress management, working in a lot of other different kinds of stuff, domain hosting, managing the back end of that. And so by the time I heard from you that LodeStar was looking for somebody to help with their WordPress site, and it was a natural fit, I was looking for something in a different direction. And here I am. I guess tomorrow is my 4-year anniversary here at LodeStar.
Yeah, this episode will come out on your 4 years here, which is
that's right.
Crazy.
That is really funny. Yeah.
We didn't actually plan that, but it's a great happenstance.
Yeah, the universe planned it for us. So
100%, yeah. And it's been fun because I feel like you've gotten to I feel like we've built a lot of the LodeStar brand together. You were, here when we first started Lending Leaders, even though I briefly edited it, I think for the first season I was editing it, and then my husband was editing it. And then you started editing it 2 years later because we had you working on a bunch of other projects.
I came on right after season 1 had finished.
Yeah.
And season 2 I started to get involved in. And by season 4, I was doing all of the back end editing and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've definitely grown a lot since you started with us 4 years ago. I think you were employee. I don't know what employee number you were.
Something like 12.
12, somewhere in that range. And now we're up to 22. Which is great, especially, in this market and all that joyous stuff. How have you kind of seen the marketing that we've done shift over the last 4 years from, when you started to now?
That's a much better question than the one I wrote for you. Your agility on these interviews is just astounding, impressive. So I think when I first started, one of the biggest questions that we were asking was, who is our client? Who are our clients? We were doing persona-based marketing, which is where you try to define the different kind of channels of communication you establish based on who you're trying to convert at what point in, a customer journey. And that was something that we were nailing down as I was coming on. And then that shifted a lot to paying less attention to personas per se and more attention to the state of the market.
Yeah.
What are the pain points that lenders are experiencing? And I'm not saying one was better than the other, but it was definitely a shift where we tried to just keep our ear to the ground in terms of what are specific needs. So that style of communication really changed. And then in terms of formatting, I think one of the things that we changed a lot is trying to have content, pieces of content that would meet different time commitments, like a 40-minute podcast, which, I think they used to do.
We used to do 45-minute podcasts.
Or a 5-second comic strip, a 5-minute blog, having these different kind of time commitments that would all hit the message that we were trying to convey and to illustrate some of the points we were trying to make.
Yeah, and I think it's tough to, I think we had a conversation earlier where it's like at the end of the day we are a closing cost vendor,
Yeah.
right? And it's sometimes difficult to have conversations, especially, when we were earlier on in the industry, is like you don't know what you don't know. It's the reason I got my AMP. It's the reason you went to school mortgage banking one.
Yep.
Is I think it really does, we're very lucky that Jim and Dave let us invest money into training the employees we have on knowledge in the mortgage industry. It's really important to us. And it's allowed us to comment a little bit more on things like the regulatory changes and shakeups that are happening. I think from a vendor perspective, you never really want to comment too much on what mortgage lenders are doing. And I think anyone that's in marketing would agree with that, right? Because you can very easily offend a lot of people very quickly. And so, how do you see, what have you seen change from the perspective of us being, I think I've jokingly said our marketing strategy this year is like, how unhinged can we be before we get in trouble? How have you seen that affect your job, right? Like, and what you do every day?
Yeah, so the goal to not be partisan is still there, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we are closing cost experts. Our job is to provide really, really, really accurate data to people who are in the trenches, and that hasn't changed one bit. With some of the regulatory changes, there's definitely questions that come up in terms of, will there be differences in 5 years about like how you have to disclose, how often, what kind of restrictions, and so. It's funny, that's not really the stuff that we're anxious about as much in terms of there is sort of this through line that people will always need closing costs, and so maybe that's it right there, right? It's just keeping our message on the stability of what we provide, which is data, and that data as LodeStar grows, it only becomes more accurate. We've always been proud of it, but we only have more and more and more time to invest in the procedures of updates, the amount of fees that we can cover. That in the last 5 years alone, since I've been here, has changed in terms of the scope of it broadening. So, I think just really harping on providing stability amid uncertainty is a great message.
100%. And I think it's something that we very much have been able to do for our employees and all of that too, right?
Absolutely.
We very proudly have been made it through the last 4 years without, layoffs and all of that. And, there's not a lot of organizations that unfortunately can say that.
Yeah.
Especially with the last downturn. And it's a, leadership decision to just be like, hey, like we're going to protect the employees we have. And it's just, it's cool to see how that also reflects in how we talk through marketing and through sales and all of that, right? Because marketing really is the brand voice, right? It's what people know LodeStar as outside of just the people.
Yeah. On that note, I think one of the neat things about LodeStar, especially in the last 4 years, with current, whether it's we're talking about the current regulatory ups and downs, or just the bigger picture of the last several years ups and downs, the having good strategy, like I think you guys in leadership really do have, it makes the difference between sacrificing creativity or not. You can weather a storm and keep hold of, invest in, grow your creativity, do things, take bold swings, do new things. And that doesn't have to go by the wayside. So it deserves a shout out, if nothing else. The commitment to creativity.
100%. And I think it's fun to get to do. And we get to say that we do things that no one else does. And speaking of things that no one else does, Tale of Two Mortgages is our comic strip. You draw it every week. We've definitely made a lot of improvements since I think we first came out with it almost 3 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to kind of see. And I think, we've got some new direction we're going in with Horace and Octavia. And you want to talk a little bit about that and tell people, what you're excited about and stories you're excited to tell?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. As far as new direction, the comic is going to stay the comic, and the characters they've already had their little stylistic upgrade a couple months back.
They're very fancy.
They have shading. They've broken the fourth wall to comment on as much. But the biggest thing that we're seeing as far as a change with Tale of Two Mortgages is it's now available on Instagram. I went and took Psalm 1, the School of Mortgage Banking class to the MBA, and inevitably, what do? Comes up, I draw mortgage comics. Wait, what? We have those? Yes, we do. Where do I find them? And then we came to this realization that they're maybe not as easy to find as we had hoped. So we're hoping to increase that reach a little bit and tell new stories, really, again, the stability amid uncertainty, harping on that in ways that are a little more whimsical and silly.
Yeah, and I think too, we're definitely going more towards just actually like I think regulatory concerns are something that we've kind of always kind of shied away from, and I think we're pushing the barrier a little bit more with that. Forrest
Yeah.
got to give us a market update a couple weeks ago. That was fun. And really commenting on, I think, what lenders are feeling every day, right? And I think that's the other thing. You have some sources that tell you all these lovely stories. So if you
Yeah.
have a story that you'd like us to tell in comic book form, Tim would love to.
Yeah, we'll give it the little sea creature treatment. I have a group of friends and people I know in the industry who maybe would come up to our booth trying to actually, get closing costs and not read comics, but they would say, "Oh yeah, I have a funny story. I would love to see it in the comics," or "You'll never believe what happened to me." So I definitely collect those. Those are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
One, share it. T. Austen with an EN at lssoftwaresolutions.com, or just LinkedIn because that's
it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
You can also just like DM LodeStar and we'll make it'll make its way.
Stories will make their way to me.
100%. Well, I know you've already answered the LodeStar question, so I'm trying to think of a nice question to ask you as we wrap up today. What would you? Oh, here we go. I'm going to put you in the shoes of your character.
Okay.
So I want you to answer for both Horace and Octavia.
Okay.
A lodestar is a guiding light in the night sky that guides what we do and how we do it. What would be Horace's lodestar and what would be Octavia's?
That's an awesome question. Oh, I feel like Horace would want to believe that it's people leaving him alone. But I think really he kind of believes in the American dream in a way that he maybe isn't willing to admit. He wants to get sea creatures into homes.
Just like every other Lolo. He knows what he's into.
He's lazy, he doesn't want to work too hard, but I feel like he likes showing up at the office. Yeah. And as far as Octavia goes, oh man, she is a do-gooder. She really wants to, her heart's in it. Her lodestar is just the joy of getting people into homes.
Yeah.
And maybe having to fight Horace to make that happen sometimes.
Sometimes your senior LO is just causing trouble along the way.
I'm just saying, stay out of her appraisals folder, Horace. That's all.
That's all. Get out of there.
Maybe use the CRM. The post-it notes are not working for you, bud.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining me today and, all of the hard work that you do on this podcast and on all of our other content. Honestly, if you haven't checked out our content, I cannot emphasize this enough. We try and create quality content for free for mortgage lenders every day. And we really care about doing it. It's fun to do. And if we're not creating something that you want us to be creating, tell us, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear it. And we love suggestions, and we're not saying we'll do it, but it might be something we look at down the road.
We read a lot of feedback and are always eager for new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Closing costs are amazingly complex, but not that interesting. So we like to keep it light.
Yeah. There's a reason we do cure-all kits at every show. It gets people talking because you hand some people some liquid IV and some ibuprofen and everything's better. So, well, if people need to find you, we talked about we gave your email, we gave your LinkedIn.
You can DM Tale of Two Mortgages on Instagram. It's at Tale of Two Mortgages.
Yeah, go
give us a follow, give us a like, leave us a comment. We'd love to see you there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tim, and we will see you all next week.